Okay, let's do speaker view. All right. Gallery speaker. Question. What do you call 100 dead moderators laid end to end at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean? Answer, a good fucking start. Hi, I'm Layman Pascal. The poor sucker asked to be the moderator or mediator, or maybe just be benevolently present for the showdown between former Integral 2.0 provocateur David Long and the meta-theorist of Black metamodernism, Germane Marvel. They have chosen to publicly explore their differences concerning whether diunital both-and thinking is actually second tier, as well as what metamodernism is supposed to mean, and maybe, at least from my point of view, how we make sense of authenticity in integrative consciousness in the context of still favoring post-hegemonic pathways into meta-progressive, non-dual, regenerative, developmental, trans-indigenous culture, man. These are tricky waters, folks, and if you'll forgive the pun, which you should not, it will be a genuine marvel if we can all get along. Before we get started, I'll do a few bits of personal framing, and then I'll describe the format we're going to use. The first thing I'd like to say in general is that while I personally find it essential to give people the benefit of the doubt and follow my curiosities into the deep, unblemished spirit of anyone even vaguely involved in depth-oriented transformational culture in the age of the meta-crisis, that's not everyone's approach, not all the time. There's real injuries, real feelings, real social dynamics, real differences of ideas in circulation. There are real discriminations we need to make more cleanly, and real discriminations we need to stop making, whether we realize it or not. So there are actual things at stake here, and I understand that sometimes passions will run high. We would certainly like this event to stay cleanly focused on a good faith exchange of ideas and critiques, but that's easy to say and harder to enact, especially when the nature of good faith itself might be one of the contested points. Since there are sociological, ideological, ethnic, developmental, and typological tensions at play, we should understand that the participants are going to be colliding with each other's categories and assumptions to some degree. As much as we want to be clean thinkers, we're also differentiated human beings with sensitive hearts. I'd like to remind both gentlemen today that they are on display to a mixed community of intelligent, subtle, passionate people who are ostensibly their peers, and that both their insights and the grace with which they comport themselves in these proceedings could be considered an investment in their future within the transrational community. Both these folks are English-speaking males who exist in a liminal space near to integral, near to mainstream metamodern, near to game B type discourse communities. They both like music. They both get kicked out of some of the best discussion forums, which I can respect. These men, I think, have enough in common to feel how different they are, which makes this interesting. And while some of the best meta women might be rolling their eyes at yet another meta pissing contest, and they're not wrong, let's also remember that the public airing of slightly hostility tinged differences in philosophy and phrasing is a time-honored male ritual that may still have an ongoing legit place in higher and deeper levels of understanding. I'm personally grateful to both these weirdos for doing this in public and allowing all of us to behold them and hold them to a higher standard while they sort out and inform each other as tentacles of our collective intelligence. I'm reminded of a story where a devotee asked Bhagwan Rajneesh why enlightened masters often disparage each other. And he told them a story about a village where two merchants who were operating candy stands got into a heated discussion. The disagreement boiled over and they exploited their only weapons, hurling candy missiles at each other. As a result, the children in the village all got free candy. So personally, I'm going to choose the perspective that this event is beneficial for everyone. Now let's go over the format that I've picked in consultation with both men. I'm going to keep the contestants muted except when it's their turn to speak. We'll begin as agreed with David explaining why he thinks Germane's version of both and thinking and his metamodern approach are insufficient. And then Germane will negate the negation with a counter critique. Each man can take up to 15 minutes before I cut them off, and they can end at any time within that interval by simply stating they're finished. If they get within a minute of the limit, I'll make a ridiculous sound to let them know I'm close to brutally silencing them. Then each will get a 10-minute rebuttal or counter critique. I'll ask each one a question that they can answer for up to 5 minutes. They'll each get to ask each other a question, again with an answer of up to 5 minutes, and then we'll have a round of 2 summary conclusions of up to 10 minutes each. After that, we can all go down to our local pub and pretend our values have triumphed. That said, let's begin. Here is I Am David Long.
What's up? What's up? How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing well out there. I am going to set my own timer for 15 minutes so I can have some kind of an idea where I'm at myself. Let's see, that's probably not going to stand up very well. Big thanks to Layman for setting all this up and for such a great introduction. I think he qualified everything really well. I want to agree with him. I want to yes and his idea here that these ideas do matter. This is not just a pissing contest between egos, but actually getting these ideas right have a major effect in the world. They actually matter a lot. They matter a lot to me. They matter a lot to Germane. And that's why we're here talking about this stuff, because we both really care about getting it right. And we understand that there's like major consequences for not getting it right. So hopefully that's a good faith framing. Let me first start off by talking about my history with an understanding of metamodernism. So let's see. The people who write as Hanzi, they have been my integral peers for over a decade. About 10 years ago, Daniel shared his index for his first metamodernism book in a note I posted about integral politics, which was a part of a bigger project with 8 other integralists, all sharing their perspectives on integral politics. It was a very exciting time, and it was also a very troubling time because there was lots of problems in the community in terms of criticism around Wilbur and his particular Buddhist influences and how that showed up as overly spiritual and not involved enough in the world. So Daniel set out this project to try and rebrand and come up with a new system, a new package, a new way of making this into a project that was informed by integral thinking, that was actually going to be productive and helpful in the world. And I think this is a great project. A couple years ago, I had a talk with him on my channel about this for a couple hours, and it was set up in kind of a versus sort of way, but we found out that we agreed on a lot of stuff, and our perspectives really weren't that different. And the reason why he ended up taking the Metamodern title was because basically how we talk about lines at all in general, or stages at all in general, is by doing a meta-analysis of developmental psychology and the different lines. There's a whole bunch of people, like a lot of people are very critical of spiral dynamics and this kind of stuff, but spiral dynamics is not the only way that we get stages. I think the main reason that we as a community talk in blanket ways about stages with spiral dynamics colors is because spiral dynamics is the values line, which is actually probably the closest to the general altitude of a person. The idea is that some lines run ahead and some lines run behind. So for example, usually cognitive runs ahead and moral runs behind, because the understanding always comes before skillful control. So I think what happened is that Daniel saw that metamodernism was the distinction being made in the art line, that people were talking about this next higher level of a type of art that was emerging, and there was some excitement around that and some talk around that, and a couple articles and videos and things had been published, and it seemed like a fairly new emerging thing that correlated to what was happening around this stage across other lines. And so I think he was like, that could be another good brand name that is still like another synonym for something like integral or metasystemic, meta-theoretical, something like that, as a reaction to postmodernism. So let's see. I also understand this trouble of trying to think of another synonym as a way of rebranding, because I'm trying to do that same project myself. So I can understand where he's coming from. Okay, so let's move on to the problems I have seen with metamodernism. I'm really going to have to try to speed run these notes. I see metamodernism as a failed project because they didn't really do as good of a job bringing the maps along with them. And because the founders of metamodernism used a pseudonym, and there had already been writings of other people doing metamodernism before, there isn't really any kind of authority or ground that you can appeal to. And so what has happened is that no one can really even agree what metamodernism means. And because these things have been made accessible to a broader audience by making it more simple and taking away some of the explicit maps and stuff, basically he's opened these ideas up to a whole bunch of people. And one of the problems we had in Integral before was that there are a bunch of people in the community who don't really live up to the standards, but now it's actually worse because there's no authority or maps or ground to point to. So I think that it ends up being, even though it was a good idea to secularize and politicize, there are still more problems with Integral, which is there's no leadership, there's no structure, there's no integration process, there's no means through which, there's no structured way to initiate people into the process or to set up some kind of hierarchy in that context to make sure that the integrity of the brand and the project is maintained and that we can build together on a shared foundation. So I actually see metamodernism as even worse of a failed project than Integral, because at least in Integral you can appeal to something. So let's see, let's move to point 2. How I come to this debate. I quit Integral a while back. I have videos about it. You can check it out. I tried to reform the brand. I tried to work from the inside, but I ultimately decided that I was tired of fighting and I just wanted to build something new. So I'll be working on that. I have spent a long time advocating for Integral. So before I move on, I'm going to talk about some of the problems in the Integral shadow and stuff like that. But very soon, the new stuff will be coming out. Germane reached out to me after seeing a comment I made in a Metamodern group, and I told him I'm critical, I'm skeptical, and that are more people joining this thing? I'm critical, I'm skeptical, and I have a lot of issues with what's happening in the community as it is. We had some more talks, but I didn't really get a chance to get into it. I was a little bit concerned with the black framing of it, at first, but Germane actually qualified it pretty well, and I was happy with that. He said there's Dutch metamodernism and Nordic metamodernism, and they include everyone, so why not black metamodernism that also includes everyone? And I was happy with that. Later, I posted a Fred Hampton quote. He said, "We got to face some facts, that the masses are poor, the masses belong to what you call the lower class. And when I talk about the masses, I'm talking about white masses, I'm talking about black masses, brown masses, yellow masses too. We've got to face the fact that some people say you fight fire best with fire, but we say you put fire out best with water. We say you don't fight racism with racism. We're going to fight racism with solidarity. We say you don't fight capitalism with black capitalism. You fight capitalism with socialism." And Germane's comment was both and not either or. I can fight fire with fire, I can starve it with oxygen, and I can get it wet. Applying these in the correct context will save more lives than either one on its own. So these are quotes. And I asked him, I'm quoting, I asked, because the problem I see with this, obviously, is that Fred here is saying that fire is racism. And, we don't fight fire with fire. We don't fight racism with racism. So this is his metaphor. And Germane is saying that he can fight fire with fire. So he's saying he can fight racism with racism. And I'm asking him, he's saying no, but that is pretty much what is directly implied. And I'll be glad to hear his rebuttal to this. And I'm asking him, like, okay, well, are we applying this both and standard across the board? The way to test moral ideas is to see how they apply in different contexts. I'm like, are we going to do this for both? Are we going to both and rape, murder, genocide, all these kinds of things? And he's on some like, how could you say that? That's but what we don't see on the other side of this conversation, or at least I haven't seen yet, maybe we'll see it here soon, is an actual application of this both and to any of these moral problems. He said, definitely do my best to take a diunital approach to understand someone's argument. It prevents me from suggesting, as you are, that rape, torture, and abuse against children is okay. That's what happens when I avoid strawmanning you or reducing you to absurdity. So he is saying it's a strawman and a reduction to an absurdity, but I'm still looking for how he applies these things when it comes to yes-anding racism. Where's the coherent position here? And then later, I'm not going to have a chance to say all the things I want. I'm going to have to speed run the rest. Then later, he was also yes-anding this idea of idealism. I recently put out the Sword in the Stone challenge, and it's emergentism versus idealism. This is a dichotomous position. Either the world is nested in mind, or mind is nested in the world. And he's, saying that he's both a meta-realist and a meta-idealist in different contexts. Apparently, if you put meta above something, then then it all works somehow. But there are right and wrong answers. That we don't want to both and racism. We don't want to both and sexism. We don't want to both and rape. We don't want to both and yes or no questions. If there is a right and wrong answer to a fact claim, both and is not a helpful tool in that regard. So both and might be a good way to try and see all perspectives, but I don't really think it's the best tool. I would have liked to talk about divisions of four and how you can actually take into account more perspectives that way. And then you can also do like a coming from this way around and coming from that way around to a perspective. And so, like, for example, when it comes to any position, there might be people who hold that position, but coming from two different directions with this tool. And we still end up creating all kinds of simple dichotomies, pitting sides against each other, and doing something like like Peterson does, where he says, there's women and men, and there's order and chaos, and like you start lining up all these dichotomies, and then you start being like ended up with these conclusions like women are chaos and stuff like this. So he's doing something like this when he's talking about matriarchal and patriarchal societies and what we would call like agentic and communal, things like this. And let's see. So the whole point of second tier thinking is not just to see all perspectives or to find a position where everyone's right. It's to be able to see all perspectives and then come to discriminating wisdom on top of that. So integral takes into account all kinds of perspectives. It does quadrants, and then within that it does levels. So there might be 8 different perspectives on any perspective from different developmental heights. There's states of consciousness. There's a bunch of different lines that make up what constitutes development, and there's types. So all of these maps are way better than just both and thinking. They're both and thinking plus. And part of the last point, if I can get there, would you mind extending me another minute, Germane? Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. All right. The problem here is that we end up in a green performative self-contradiction. Not only do we create a positive flatland when we say everybody is right, but we're also contradicting ourselves when we're claiming that we have a meta perspective, and we're creating a dichotomy between dichotomous thinking and diunal thinking. And yeah, maybe I'll just leave it there for now.
Thank you, David. Germane, you can unmute and respond.
Thanks. Layman, so firstly, thanks for agreeing. I wonder if I could just ask you one question on the green performative, just what the full name of that is. Not a definition, just the full term you used, possible.
You're asking David?
Yes, if that's possible.
Let me just ask him to unmute.
Performative self-contradiction.
Green performative self-contradiction.
Yeah, a green performative self-contradiction is doing something like judging people for judging people, right? Or like, things like that, where it's like you're doing the thing, you're actively doing the thing that you're criticizing people for. So if you're saying that it's bad to create a dichotomy, and then you create a dichotomy between dichotomous thinking and non-dichotomous thinking, you're right back in another dichotomy. In yeah, there you go.
Got you. Thank you, bro. All right. Can my 15 minutes start now, or does it start already?
Go ahead. I'm starting the timer.
Thanks. All right. So David calls it green performative self-contradictions. I think she said something about claiming to have a meta perspective and having a perspective on others. Personally, I don't really deal with all this color business in the way that is ordered in integral. I think it's arbitrary and therefore a form of double speak, but I'm going to get to that. My claim is kind of that David is kind of basically at the moment here doing what he's accused me of. At any moment, leading up to now, what has happened could be avoided with David just being humble enough to read some of my work. And it's just something that happens so much. And that's why I titled my last work, The Third Cradle, Decolonizing AI and Dehumanizing Black Thought. The decolonization lessons aren't just about AI, they're about everything. And that's, yeah. So both and. I'm gonna explain why I'm on the journey, why I'm not really happy about this, because both and is something that is used by Black people to basically overcome racism and to deal with racism and to deal with being treated as less than human and overcoming that by knowing that's not true. So if we notice that David actually starts with diunital thinking, he started his whole thing with, when we go back, he started with, I want to yes and this position. So in denouncing it, he's also using it, which is what I think he's kind of doing here anyway. He wants to destroy me so he can take this idea and use it in other places. I've seen it and some of my other ideas taken and used. And I'm actually fine with that. I design it that way because that's the best thing for everybody. I don't make any money out of this or anything I do. It's basically a full-time job I do. So bear that in mind, yeah? And bear that in mind that in taking away the use and validity of diunital thinking, you're also taking away a tool of liberation, and in such you're contributing to oppression. If then you want to also take that and use it in your own way, then that is also contributing to a tool of oppression. So even though you might be set up against colonizers, and I've had problems with people like this in my group, you might be up against it, but if you're coming to me with an attitude of you think you know everything better than me and you have nothing to learn from me, because I learned from everyone in my group. The only way I got to diunital is from Jen Pierre Rich, you know, and this is a white, as far as I know, she's a white lady, do you know what I'm saying? And she's teaching me something about Black people, yeah? Because that's how it actually goes. Everyone is a peer in this space, and you don't treat people like peers, David, and that's the problem. So when you go to Hansi, we'll see that he comes from a similar worldview to you, David. And if you have read my two cradles theory, you'll see he comes from the Northern Hemisphere, and the Northern Hemisphere tends to use either or thinking, while the Southern Hemisphere tends to use both and thinking. Obviously, I'm diunital, and so I'm doing a meta-analysis, going off script here that I just wrote, I'm following you, but doing a meta-analysis, I can see that to use diunital thinking on those worldviews, I need to use both worldviews. And that means I need to approach things in a different way. For everybody who's watching, all my work is written like this. If you find it hard to approach my work and you're an academic, people who find it hard, who are laymen, will also find it hard, but they'll find it easier in some ways. And if you understand this, you can understand my work and what I'm trying to do. If you can't understand this and you see your one perspective is better than everyone else's, you're not gonna like it. If you're doing this for money, and you've commodified the culture, then you're not gonna like what I'm doing when I ask to what degree are you metamodern? And that mainly has what it comes down to. And I'm talking very specifically about people. And the tendency to which I use people's names here, David, relies a lot on you here, because I'm only mentioning Hansi now because you've made me. I'm the leader of the Hansi group, which has just changed to Nordic Metamodernism, because people asked, I said it needs to change, and I suggested names, and that one was chosen, and so that's what it is now, Nordic Metamodernism. I'm in that group, and I don't want to diss these people because they're part of it. Let me get back to what I'm saying. Hansi, Wilbur, and you all come from this same worldview of either or. So of course you're going to look at anything I'm saying as either or. You're going to think, oh, he means either diunital or either or. That's not what I'm saying. That's never been what I'm saying. SD colors is doublespeak. The SD hierarchy, the metamodern hierarchy as we know it has been mainly linear. And because it's been mainly linear, yeah, of course it's going to cause problems. And of course it's going to look colonial as well. And of course it's going to lead to people doing this green performative self-contradictions that you're talking about, which I actually call throwing stones in glass houses and hiding your hands, which you yourself do a lot of, but I'm going to get back to that. Throwing stones in glass houses and hiding your hands. Remember that, guys. Yeah, so you said that they led to metamodernism through art. Art in the Northern Hemisphere is known for art's sake, is what it's become known as. For Black people, along the way, art has always been for survival's sake, especially after the whole transatlantic enslavement and human trafficking mess. It's art for survival's sake. It's art to keep whole, all of it. So that's another reason why I take this seriously. I'm not doing this for a joke. I'm not doing this just for the sake of being the smartest person in the room. I'm doing this for the survival of myself and my descendants and the people around me's descendants, Black and brown people, and beyond that, because liberation is for everybody. Black people can't be liberated unless everyone is liberated. You said that it was a reaction to POMO. In this, I think, is a problem because the Northern Hemisphere's thinking has been a scarcity mindset thinking from the scarcity cradle compared to the relative abundance of the Southern cradle. So the reaction is from that. And the reaction is not a good thing. The reaction, it has just been hypermodernism. It's been postmodernism, then it's been oscillations between that, which is what these other things are. So if we actually look at metamodernism just far older, I believe Gonzalez uses the term in 1970s to describe the way that the real world had become like a science fiction. And so science fiction had nowhere else to go but to use diunital thinking in order to put together the post-fiction novel and the metafiction, where the metafiction is where the person's aware they're in a fiction, so it's no longer really a fiction, but it still is. So this is diunital at the heart of metamodernism, right there. Now, if you look, this is also the reason why I'm not happy with you trying to take down diunital thinking. It's not even my theory. It's this guy here, this guy, Vernon J. Dixon, yeah? This is the guy you're dissing, yeah? This is the guy who's trying to solve racism. This is from the 70s, yeah? This is from the 70s, he's talking about this in the Black population. That's what part of the reason why it's Black metamodernism. Skipping ahead, Black and Black metamodernism is about race as in the terms of what's been done colonially, Black or white. It's also the ethnicity, which is cultural, which can be or can be all of those. It's also the archetype of what Black means in this white supremacist culture, which you do support in your own way, Now, if you look to the actual use of metamodernism that I'm using, I'm not using Hansi's one. I'm doing something completely different. And that's how I can both spaces. That's how I can be in both spaces. What I'm taking from is Moyo Okadeji from 1999 in a paper, and he wrote and used the term metamodernism. Yes, you could have found this a long time ago. If you go to the Black Metamodern forum, guys, in the file section, there's an interview with Moyo Okadeji from last year with Jason Storm, who wrote an amazing book about all the tools you can use to take down people like David who try and come for you with their things. And we're going to get into that later. Moyo Okadeji talks about metamodernism as going beyond the restraints, the limitations of the idea of only the Western form of modernity, which just negates completely Africa. You have East and West. So that's actually the angle that I'm coming from. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't go into the term meta, because it's not oscillation. That's just nonsense. It's extension, it's going beyond. Oscillation is only a path to get to that place, but oscillation is not the thing. This is not an oscillator project, is what I'm saying. Something that I'm also saying, I don't know how long I've left, but I feel like I've said enough. Something else, oh, you said, sorry, before I go into game B and how actually game B is actually the game we have now. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna say it now. The first cradle is the southern cradle, cradle of abundance. The second cradle is the cradle, the northern cradle, the cradle of scarcity. So the game B is actually the colonial project. That's what's wrong with game B, for those of you who know. Yeah, they need some back diunital thinking. You said about the Fred Hampton quote. By the way, the Fred Hampton, the Black Panthers, they used either or thinking as well, but in the wrong way. They either capitalism or socialism. That was completely against what the state wanted, so they got handed down. People like Nation of Islam didn't do that. They either or in a different way with segregation. And because they said, we leave you alone, if you leave us alone, they didn't get handed down. They got talked badly about, but they didn't get pounced down until, you know, Malcolm X left, and then they were right with someone getting pounced down, okay? So, Malcolm X, obviously, you know, one of the reasons is because he was more willing to be violent. So he kind of both and the violence, which is what you're kind of concerned about. And this is the problem. You're thinking negatively of me. The quote, I was not referring to racism. And if you actually look at what racism is, it is an intolerance of such a degree that is negative and harmful to other people and the person, and it's along the lines of race. So it's an intolerance. Now you have to be intolerant of intolerance. The fire is not race. The fire is intolerance. You have to fight fire with fire sometimes. Sometimes, David, you can also fight it with love. And I came to you as an ally. And instead of listening to me as a peer, you treated me like someone who was lower than you and had no idea what I was talking about, because you have this niche thing, which confines every conception to what you want it to be. So you said I pretty much directly implied. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. You needed to ask me, because obviously I was talking, that's why I use the specific words about fire. That's why I use this to provide a metaphor. You took the metaphor in an either or way, just like the West often does with a lot of ancient literature, including Greek literature. We think we're discussing it the right way, we're not. So you took an either or position about what I was saying. This is the problem, this is the part of the problem. Even in thinking of stages, you have to think of stage and lines. It's the black meta mode. It's a mode. The mode can be linear. I don't even know how much time I've got left. Let me check. The mode can be linear. And if I've spoken too fast and I had to repeat myself, I will do. The mode can be linear, but it can also be non-linear. The stages that I have marked out in the writing that I have, what does it take to be metamodern? It's a variation of degrees. The stages are not linear, but they include the first four that you keep talking about. In my own way, they include the first four, and they could be fitted in, but they have about, I've got at least, I think I've got 12 at the moment, 12 different stages. And it's not, and these stages can be aligned to theological stages. They can also be aligned to epochs of time. But you're not going to find this in one place, David. If you want to find this, you're going to have to find this in lots of different places. So yeah, and if you want to talk about this, if anyone wants to talk to me about this stuff, you can feel free to come and talk to me. If you ever think I'm saying something that sounds absurd, just say, hey, what do you mean by that? And it's probably just going to be easy, because I'm going to go easier than you if you start throwing stones. Throwing stones is when you subtly ad hominem someone by talking, like you say, oh, this person is doing, what is this? This is nonsense. You're subtly saying that I'm talking nonsense and I don't have rational in my head, okay? Then in glass houses, because actually, you know, instead of assuming that the person is talking nonsense, I could be a bit smarter and think, okay, maybe they're talking sense. Maybe I should hold off a bit, you know, be smarter, maybe emotionally, and think, okay, let me hear what they're saying. So actually, you know, what I'm saying about the other person, that applies to me. And then hide in your hand. So you pretend that you're not actually doing anything by doing this subtly. And you say, okay, what are you doing? And then when the person reacts, if they're not robotic in their effect, when the person reacts, then you say, oh, look, see, you're just doing this. I'm actually better than you. And then you get ready to throw the next stone. And this cycle repeats quite often in things that you're doing and saying, and it's not just you, I have to admit, it's a lot of other people. it's some of your followers, I am Kai. I just have to, Vinay sometimes does this. I have to say, you do it, Vinay, and that's why we have our problems. And it's quite often because you're applying this either or thinking, where either you are good or I am good. And it can't be both of us are peers. One of us has to be better than the other. Have I got anything else to say? So yeah, in that sense of throwing the stone in glass houses and hiding your hand, which you have done, you know, I came to you as Allah, you said, no, actually, you don't know what you're talking about. I know better than you. So you threw the stone in that way, in a glass house, because actually, you know, I do make sense. And right now, the only people I can talk to is Hansi. Hansi has said something like, oh, this is brilliant work or something. To me personally, I asked him if I could quote him. He said, yeah, I don't need to use that. Do you know what I'm saying? He's quoted me on his page before. I just said resistance is fertile when you're talking about something. He's like saying resistance is not futile. I said resistance is fertile. And resistance is fertile because when you came to me with your bullshit, I've taken that and used it as a response to all the people who think what I'm doing is completely nuts. And I've actually processed it. And now I've made it fertile. So my resistance to you is fertile. And I don't want other people, if other people are watching this, don't let this guy do this to you anymore. Make sure this guy treats you as a peer. We need to be peers. It's not about looking down on each other. A lot of us just need to, like, I've been told by Vinay, you need to grow up. A lot of us need to grow up, you know, but we all need to grow up. If you point a finger at other people, 4 point back at you, you know? So I have to understand what, if I'm telling you, David, bro, you need to grow up. At the same time, I need to grow up because there are things I could have done in this whole thing, you know, to make this smoother, do you know what I'm saying? But right now, I'm pissed off because I've endured this throughout my entire life, people telling me I'm chatting shit. And I know when I'm chatting shit because I'm very good at it. That's what I do for a living. I'm actually a professional rapper. So you're coming at me. How long have I got left anyway?
30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. You know what, yeah? I'll drop you some bars next time, innit? And I'll explain how it is basically what you're doing. And I've already written about it because I encountered this so much. There we go. So yeah, bars next.
Right. My screen just did. David, let's unmute you for your counter.
All right. First, we find the opposites. The opposites attract. To find themselves in opposition, we need to step back. Divisions of four may help with that. Now we see a cycle. Let's look at the facts. Pros and cons on all sides is what we find. We weigh the short-term and long-term possibilities in our mind. From this point of understanding, we can take control, do what we must do to accomplish our goals, not just for me, but for the whole. Listen, man, you admit that you're doing a different project than Hansi. That speaks to my point. You say stages are arbitrary. They're not. They're, as I said, they're based on a meta-analysis of different psychological tests that have been done across different lines. There's a whole bunch of researchers that have all been peer-reviewed. I mean, are there issues with some of these things? Yeah, there's issues with all kinds of psychological science. You know, maybe they don't include enough factors. Maybe their interpretation has problems or something like that. But if you're going to reject a scientific test, you have to say what's wrong with the test and why. It's not, integral isn't based on either or dichotomous thinking. What you don't understand is that there's a Hegelian dialectic. It's not just this or that. When you're saying, when you're reacting against either or thinking, you're basically just a postmodernist reacting against modernism and wanting to create this flatland where we're all peers. But let me tell you something, my dude. We are not all peers. This is the whole point of making these distinctions. Second tier people are elitists. And we will exclude people from our groups who don't actually rise up to those standards. However, every single one of the people in these spaces have a world-centric consciousness, meaning that every single one of them, even though they wouldn't invite every single person to be their intellectual peer, still have care for the entire world and take into account all perspectives in their thinking. We integrate diversity with discernment. It's not just that we take all perspectives. We take all perspectives and then say that some perspectives are better than others, and that some perspectives are more correct than others, and some people are more are actually our peers who are talking about meta theory on our level. Like, people who are integralists are actually like at the cutting edge of these conversations. We're talking about like applications of the quadrants, like like, is there something like quadratic zoom? Is there something like primacy? These are not conversations you're having because you're not initiated into the conversation to even know what's being talked about. Like, you don't know what a pre-trans fallacy is. Like, this is something Layman brought up. It's not just that there are two positions, but these positions can be held from people at multiple different levels of the spiral. And it's like, for example, you're committing the pre-trans fallacy when you're saying that people at integral are doing dichotomous thinking. That is, it's the exact equivalent as when Christian people will say that atheists are being rebellious, egoic children. It's like you only know the stage up to the stage that you're at. And if you see something beyond it, you're likely to try and reduce it to the stage before it. So, for example, you see me making this claim about how idealism doesn't rise to a rational standard. And you reduce it to either or thinking. You want to say everybody's right. Well, if you actually understood my perspective, you would understand that in a way, I'm saying everyone's right too. But I would say that idealist ideas have metaphorical truth and value, but they're not actually literally true. So there is still a synthesis. It's not just a simple rejection of one perspective versus the other. We still see all sides. And we're able to actually see both sides and say, when it comes to this claim, this side is correct and this side is incorrect, which is not a rejection of all idealist thinking. For example, a second ago, I brought up Hegelian dialectics, which is Hegel was an idealist. You're dichotomous. You keep bringing up this north versus south dichotomy. Let's see. Tolerance versus intolerance. You say you wanted to be allies. Well, I'd like to be allies too. But for us to be allies, we would have to actually be talking about the same thing or working on the same project. Another problem with green is false attempts at consensus. If you create a flatland and you say everyone's right, and then you pretend like we're going to be able to work together towards common ends, you're kidding yourself, because we actually don't have common ends. People don't agree. So you'd have to actually establish something, establish a foundation, establish tools, establish methodologies that we both agreed on to say that we're really peers working on the same project. And it's not violent to say that a person who doesn't know how to play chess is not your peer in chess. It's not like if a black person comes and is like, I want to play chess with you, and they're like, but I don't know how to play chess. And you're like, I'm sorry, you can't play chess with me because you're not my peer. You can't just move pieces all around on the board however you want. It's not racist to say that you have to learn how to play chess before you will be invited to play chess. I would be glad to invite you and every other person on the planet to be at this level of elite development, but it actually takes work. This is the distinction we make between natural growth hierarchies and imposed dictator hierarchies. It's a distinction Green seems to have a problem with. They have a problem with all hierarchical thinking and try to reduce everything to, hey, we're all peers. You're telling me 1 minute, but I think I'm on a time limit, so I'm going to keep going here. I'm not interested in stealing your both and idea. I was actually interested in talking to you about how you could have better tools. I'm not trying to take away your tools of liberation or or make you get rid of them. I'm trying to give you better tools for liberation. And I actually really agreed with what you said about the dichotomous thinking about socialism versus capitalism, or the agentic and communal things, like individual thinking versus communal thinking. And I do think that we actually need a synthesis. But for us to actually achieve a synthesis in a skillful way, we're going to have to make a bunch of distinctions about the pros and the cons on both sides. Let's see. This is a major problem I see in general, where is if you act like someone telling you you're wrong is them like is them doing violence against you and trying to like stop your survival. You act as if like me not treating you like you're my philosophical peer before you even learn the theory that we're like evolving up here. Like you haven't even learned the basic distinctions that freshmen in our community who come in as students try to learn. You don't even value that. Let me read a quote from a recent post. Very recently, Germane posted this quote from James Baldwin. And at the top, he said, long game, integral thinking. To what extent is integral jargon such as upper left and lower left and green and teal a form of doublespeak? And at the end, he's basically applying that this is language used to oppress him. He said, we can discuss and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and the denial of my humanity and right to exist. As if saying that like you have to learn to play chess for me to count you as my peer in chess is somehow a denial of your humanity or your right to exist. That is hyperbolic and ridiculous. If you want to like actually be involved in a conversation on our level, you have to learn about what we're talking about. And to the extent you want to say Black metamodernism is some other project, well, you can have it. It's not.
Okay, this is getting feisty. Germane, 10 minutes.
Bruh, I mean, starting to regret giving us 10 minutes and just maybe just been at 5, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't need 10 minutes, but I'll take it. Okay, so some of the terms you used there, Hegelian, either or. I mean, I know what that is, but it's just, you know, is it needed? And the way you said it, it's just interesting. Go back and watch that for micro expressions. Yeah, you talked about the spiral. I'm not talking about spiral. The only spiral I know is vital. The spiral is vital. Go check that one out by Theon Cross. Ital. Yeah, pre-trad fallacy. I know what it is from a different term. Yeah, let them use it, but not against me in agreement. Or like you're trying to twist it in some kind of way to make me look like I'm lesser than everyone else. You know, throwing stones and pretending you're not doing that. You know, that's fine. In glass houses, because you know hiding your hand is potentially not doing it. In glass houses is because you know you throw ad hominems all the time really subtly, but it's okay. Quadratic zoom, second tier. I don't know what any of these are. Forgive me. I'm not asking to see you to see me as a peer in sense of do you know how to play this complicated game which I have devised and I haven't initiated you into yet and you don't know my sense of it. That's not what it is. When people come into black metamodernism, I see them as peers straight away. There are people in there I put in there as experts, not because they know exactly what I'm doing, but because they're expertise in their own field. And I respect that and I can learn from them. As I said, I've learned from lots of people in the thing, you know, people who can't write academic papers. By the way, guys, I wrote a lot of my academic papers with AI. It wasn't easy. I had to go and edit over it. You know, I could have really written it all on my own, but my mind doesn't work that way. So I use the AI. But I decolonize the AI in the same way as doing it, you know? So that's a tip out there for you. I know you don't write stuff either. That might be, you know, I'm not as good as videos as you are. And this is my second one. I don't look like most people. I don't like bright lights. I don't like staring at screens, talking to people like that. I don't like looking at people in the eye half the time, but I will if I have to. I will if I have to. Do you know what I'm saying? So with you, I think you feel your sense kind of weakness with me coming at me. But anyway, all of these spiral, pre-trad, quadratic zoom, second tier, we're talking about metamodernism. We're not talking about any of that. And the way you're using it, I have no idea what you're talking about. I can probably guess if I tried in greens and stuff, but I don't really, you know, I looked at my thing, I found spiral dynamics when I was in uni. This is a long time ago. I'm a big man, yeah, I'm 35. I'm 35. I found that when I was about 19. And I looked at it and I thought, I see what you're doing, but it's not the thing, you know? And since when I come across it, I could memorize all them things, but my mind can go better to doing lyrics. So you're coming with this fake, oh yeah, whatever. What's all of this stuff? You know, I'm better than you in this sense. You don't know chess. When I sit down with a child to play chess and teach them, they're my peer. Even if they've never talked and they say, I want to play you, then they're my peer. They're my peer. A 4-year-old is my peer, because it's not a person to object, it's not a man to object relationship. And this is a tendency of this Northern cradle. And if you'd read my work, you would know this. It's a person-to-person relationship. I'm not valuing this person for what they can do, what they can objectively do, and the objective doesn't exist, and that's the first thing that comes wrong with your whole sword and the stone thing. Should I call you King Long? Is that what you would like me to call you, King Long? You said I was reacting, in this tirade of stuff you were saying, you said I was reacting to either or. I'm not reacting to modernism. I'm not reacting to either or. I'm reacting to hypermodernity as it is now. It's not even a reaction, it's a response, because I'm looking and it's a response to that. It's not a reaction, as you're saying. I'm not flattening everything, because actually, the reason why I got kicked out of groups is very different to you. You grandstand about racism, try to say that you're trying to do stuff about racism, but really you've got no black liberation in your ethos. There's nothing that deals with black liberation at all. At all. And the one place that has, you try to come for, just like so many people. And I swear to God, yeah, anyone who comes for the page, I will deal with you appropriately. I swear to God, I'll deal with you appropriately. And I don't block people from my page. I blocked you for a bit because I was talking about stuff which you should have read already. But I don't block people from my page. I stop you from being able to talk. How long have I got left, please, Layman?
You have 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. Cool. So I don't want to say that everybody is right, and that's why I've got kicked out of Metamodern performance before, because, and I'm going to go there because you carried on. I question places like the scientific metamodernism. To what extent is this metamodern? What makes this metamodern? And there was no answers, and he didn't like it, and he didn't like any questions about it. He wanted to be the person who said what it was. You know, I don't do that, by the way. For my theories, I say what my theories are because they're my theories. For the diunital theories, I say they are because that's this person, and I'm open to hearing how I'm wrong every time. If I make a mistake, you can tell me how to think, but you better be coming at good faith and be ready to say, I'm sorry. I apologize a lot on the internet. Ask yourself, David, how many times have you? You get me? So yeah, I'm responding to hypermodernism, which is the times that we live in. If you would know that if you read my paper, that's my first paper, everybody, Metamodern Individualism, Anonymous. Oh, and that was the one, how to deal with the neo-narcissist. I won't say any more on that. So yeah, you're still acting as if I'm wrong and you were right. That's the whole first thing, actually. And see how I got distracted. See how we got distracted from that, everybody. What it is he thought something that was completely different in the beginning. He thought I was coming from a different angle, and I'm not. And he's still trying to say it. I'm not trying to say everyone's right. Oscillation projects, that is not a metamodern project because it's oscillation. That is hypermodernism. In fact, the only group that has been able to tolerate my questioning of to what extent is this metamodernism, and it's the group that mattered the most. And I was waiting last because it's the group that mattered the most. It's the group I'm most fearful of. It's the group I would react to. If I was going to do any reaction, it'd be to that group. And it's to the metamodern right, also known as the meta right, which had worries of alt-right. I'm in that group. I've been in worse groups than that because this is what I do. I talk to people across different lines, and I use diunital thinking to do that. I have to use it to survive. Have I got 2 minutes, Layman?
3.5.
Wicked. One of those ways I use it, and I've said this already, is with Winston Churchill. He is on our £5 notes. I don't have any £5 notes, but he's on our £5 notes. I have to see this man when I get paid, when I pay for things. The man was racist. He said he was reported to have said, "Keep England white." This is after the Second World War. He said, and he was on record saying, "I enjoyed shooting, you know, the Africans in the wars down there. It was a good laugh." The reason why he was so good at what he did is because Hitler feared him. He was the only one who feared him. In this case, I'm Winston Churchill, and you know, you're not Hitler exactly, but I'm definitely Winston Churchill in this case. So even though he's done all these horrible things, he stood up to Winston Churchill. And I use diunital thinking to not get bogged down by either or, and I use it to rise above. And diunital thinking is the bridge. You're avoiding that. We're not talking about spiral dynamics. So like over half of what you just said just does not apply whatsoever. I'm not talking about spiral. I'm not talking about integral. In fact, integral leadership review, they like the work that I'm doing. Not only did they like the work I'm doing, they introduced me to the work of Gebser, because they said, oh, your idea of time is very much like Gebser's, because Gebser was using diunital thinking. The reason why Gebser used diunital thinking is because he was coming from a perspective of seeing the horrors of modernity and what we were trying to do to stop modernity. You know, that is what the World War was. It's just modernity fighting itself, trying to stop itself from doing the horrors that it's doing. And he saw that and he was embedded in it. He probably had multicultural experiences in that and saw some of the ways people treated. I don't know. But he came up with a way which had a diurnal view of time. So if you look at my view of time, it's much like Gebser's. You know, and another thing, if I got time, it's not Black Metamodernism. I called it Black Metamodernism because people would not accept what I was saying was about Metamodernism. I can go into how it applies to the structure of feeling and like all of that, but I've written about it. And he doesn't want to go into that because he knows now I can do that. This is why he's avoiding it. So maybe that's what I'll talk about next. But at the very heart of it, what I'm doing is not just Metamodernism, it's also Gebser's vision. It's just one of the tools to fulfill Gebser's vision, because it's not just me talking about it, it's actually lots of different people have seen this and wanted to bring us. But normally they are silenced by people like you, David, coming throwing stones in glass houses, hiding your hand. Oh, sorry, I'm complete.
You're complete. Okay.
Yeah, that's what they use on the internet.
Okay, I am going to ask a question of each of the participants, and they'll have a chance to ask each other one question. David, hi.
Yo.
Do you think there's a risk when we're dealing with these kind of abstract levels of ideas of projecting either or thinking onto others, right? Of feeling that we've transcended it and seeing it everywhere as kind of a shadow of transcendental thinking? And is there a risk that that's pejorative or marginalizing and gets in the way of us appreciating each other very directly, just as human beings?
Well, I think there's a very big difference between how, like, for example, people use the word respect in a very blanket kind of way, right? Whereas I would make a distinction between basic human dignity, which I think every person is worthy of, and respect, which means to hold in high esteem, right? So, for example, like there are people who I think are really, really smart and doing really, really good things that are like way more worthy of value than what other people are doing. And I respect them for that more than I respect other people. I wouldn't say every person is worthy of respect. I don't think it's semantically correct. I think every person is worthy of basic human dignity. Just like I don't think it's reasonable to say that everyone is your peer. Peer is an intellectual term, meaning that like you're on the same level, you're working on the same projects, you're in the same field. That's what the word peer means. And if you mean something different by it, well, then I guess that's what you mean. But when I say someone's not my peer, that's what I'm talking about. And in general, there have been lots and lots and lots and lots of people in this community who I have been critical of. People like Steve McIntosh, Bruce. I've even been critical of you, Layman. I've been critical of Brendan Graham Dempsey. Like, Matthew Siegel, or like I could make a list, and if I met these people in like everyday life in the world, I would think these people were some of the smartest people I've ever met. Right. And I would be so happy to have conversations with them. Even this conversation, I'm glad to be having it because it's above the average conversation level. But do I think that these people are living up to integral standards or have integral integrity or like are good for the brand or for what like the thing is supposed to be doing? No, I don't. I think that they're doing a bad job and they're fucking it up, some worse than others. For example, like Layman, I've given you a hard time for giving people the transrational benefit of the doubt. And you know, on the integral stage and stuff like this, and like under the brand name Integral, having people on who I don't think are up to that level. So I think that is kind of fucking it up. I still like you as a person. I love having conversations with you. I hope we have a bunch more. It's not personal, but yeah, I'm a critical person, and I don't apologize for that. I don't think there's a problem with it. I think that people who are doing this stuff out in public should expect that there's going to be some critical pushback, and they are not necessarily inherently just worthy of respect or being treated as a peer. I'm done. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I got for you.
Thank you. Let me start that. Hey, Germane.
Hey.
You know, one of the things that's come up in the discussion a little bit is a kind of distance you have relative to some of the terms David is invoking, and therefore also to some of the communities of discourse around those terms, and spirals and quadrants and things like that. This particular terminological armada that goes along with some of these overlapping communities. Where do you think it's an advantage to maintain some distance from those terms in order to make space for your own growth and for other versions of this to emerge? And where do you think it might be useful to like lean into and assimilate those terms a little more?
So thanks, that's a good question. Jill Nephews talks about analytical thinking. It's pretty much the tool that Eva All uses, you know, is analytical thinking. Analytical intelligence is a product basically of Eva All thinking. She talks of it as a trap. I saw it as a trap in some ways because it performs some form of conceptual incarceration upon Black thought. And it leads to menticide and drapetomania. Drapetomania is the unbearable urge to be free, causing all sorts of emotional effect. Menticide is the death of mentality in any way, intellect, creativity, mental health. I know a lot of Black men like that. So for me, it's actually dangerous to be locked into a system like that. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing green now because, you know, I've been accused of being green, even in the formatting of this, the flyer that was associated with this, you know, throwing stones at me. It's fine. Glass houses, hide the hand, it's fine. You can see now. Everyone use those terminologies. People can't do this anymore. They can do it, but everyone can see who's doing this, and they're kind of just like, okay, you do that. You're playing the trap game. That's the game of the trap, trying to be higher than everyone else. So some of it is, yeah. For example, I'm not throwing away any scientific theory. Actually, I have used the MHC, which is more robust than the most of the other ones. I've used the MHC in cosmological terms, and it fits with science. I haven't referenced it on purpose because people are going to come at it from a Northern Hemisphere point of view. You can find and do that, but you need to see the whole of it and actually how it applies to the degrees of how much someone is metamodern. So the first four quadrants, as I say, I do kind of understand them. I just don't want to lose the terminology. You know, why do I want to be trapped in that cage? I've used the terms existential, temporal, spatial, and another term, which, you know, I can't really remember now. I've got it up here and I could read it out, but I'm not going to. It's all out there. What makes a person metamodern? Degrees of dichotomy. David used dichotomous dialectics, and that's a part of it as well. To transcend and include. They don't transcend and include transcendence. So are you really transcending and including? I would actually like to, from here, take a crack at your ridiculous sword and stone challenge, where you dub yourself as a philosopher king for Excalibur stuck in the sword, which means that you're the bad person in this because the king is setting a trap for King Arthur, which you did, that was one of the events which preceded this whole thing. That I said, hey, I could do this with meta idealism. I could do it another way if you like as well, and build it from the ground up. I might not necessarily believe that idea, but I could do it as well in exactly the way you're saying. Yeah, that's fine. I can do that right here, right now. But also it's because my show just came out on Integral Stage. I know Most people only watch the first 5 to 6 minutes of things, in which then you speak very highly of me, very eloquently put into words. It's clear in my article, put into words my work in ways I never understood. And I've only come to understand exactly what you meant by representation is not representation. David thinks he represents Black people through hip hop culture. I don't know. Do you know what? Death to the bogus. Increase the focus, protect neck, head, and shoulders, Ori. Left what they told us. Every day's a bonus, and none of the boy them don't own us. Respect my soldiers. Judge our feed and clothe us. Devil wants steal and clone us. Reject the robots. They crawl like locusts. Don't fall for hocus pocus. Now take me for an idiot. Now take me for fool. Black man melanin mood. Look on the feedback. We met the gal them drew. Measure of a man and the mood. Now take me for an idiot. Now take me for fool, David. Black man melanin mood. Look upon the feedback. We met the girls them drew. Measure of a man and the mood. I do this, and you're always saying that I don't do this, and you're saying you don't see us as a peer. If this was in the hip hop world, it's completely disrespectful. If this was face to face within the hip hop world, in some circles, you would have got punched in the face. I don't think you would have talked to me in the way that you have talked to me, do the things you would do if we actually lived together, but we don't. We live in Arkansas in the Bible, but Arkansas in the Bible Belt, and I live in London. It's completely different. So put some respect on my name, basically, David, is what I'm saying. Put some respect on my name. And if you don't want to, then stay out of my lane.
You complete?
I'm complete, bro.
All right. David, have you got a question for Germane?
I'll give you 2 questions and let you pick which one you want. How about that? You good? You like that?
3, 5.
Okay.
Give us what you got, David.
I'm curious both how you think your perspective is different from postmodernism, especially when you're talking about, Black liberation, extending respect to everyone, seeing everyone as peers, and these other issues, with lack of discernment, performative self-contradiction, false attempts at consensus. How is this not just exactly postmodernism? Are you claiming that it's? You said it was a reaction against the megamodernism of the time or something. So I'll be interested to hear about that. Or you could tell me how you apply the diunital thinking to these moral questions like, rape and genocide and racism. That I still haven't heard the answer to that question. Either one, whichever you like, or both, whatever's good.
Yeah, the first one's just like a bit basic, really, and it's like I just put it into practice. If I can put it, like, if I was to answer it, just be a basic, and a lot of people would just be like, "What are you talking about?" Huh? The second question gets a bit more depth for me. I don't know why you got to keep mentioning the R word. I know a lot of people don't like that word. People that's happened to you. Do you know what I'm saying? Mentioning genocide. Okay, I get it, but you do like to, you've used that word. You used that word before several times to me. I don't appreciate it. Basically, is what I'm saying to you. You use it too freely. Unless you know it, use it too freely is what I'm saying to you. Do you know it? I don't expect, sorry, I apologize for saying that because that's out of order, because if that was the case and you did, then I shouldn't be asking such things. And at the same time, if it's not, then I suggest that you do, you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna look at whatever picture it is, because if it's a picture of a black person, like I got black person in my family, I don't care about that. I know black mothers who are racist, you know what I'm saying? So you should have been respectful to me and from a long time ago. That's how it displays. And you know what? This is how I'm gonna answer it. My peer, yeah, this is how I answer the question. My peer, it's not just for what that person can do. Okay, firstly, I see that person as the same piece of me. What separates us is what actually connects us. Think about it. The space between the atoms that make up our body is what actually connects us. So the degree that we're completely different is the degree that we're the same. I don't care if you're spiritual or not. That for me is amazing. That gives me a feeling which might be akin to saying God or not, something like I say, oh, that's beautiful. You know what I'm saying? So whatever that is, that could be your thing, existentialness, if you're atheist, whatever. Yeah, so first, there's that. In Ether, they talk about how that is the spark of the Ori, the spark of the divine Olodumare. It's the same thing that made their God, basically, that resides in everybody. So that's the first person to person to hold someone in high self-esteem, high esteem, right? Is because that's one thing. I'm going to get into the environment and how I make up their environment. So that's because they are a spark of the same existential, I'll use that word because we have to get to idealism first, existential stuff as you. The separation is just like, it's mind-blowing that there is a separation because of actually what we know now, right? It's that's the esteem I hold for you. Everything else that you've done has detracted from that, because I'm not safer around you. You're not allowing that spark to emanate from you. It's not that you have to do anything, it's just you have to let it emanate from you. It's not how to emerge, it's already there. You just have to emanate from you. You're not allowing that to be, because you're stuck in this trap, which is trapping you in. And a lot of us out there doing it, I do it as well, and I can't see it, and it annoys me because I must be doing it, because I know I'm not perfect. So we're all doing this thing, and we might have our other things. Someone might save 100 people's lives, and so you know you're really safe around that person, and so you can tell that they've got that God spark is shining through. And actually, so there is this back. It's like Western spirituality sees God as outside. Southern spirituality sees God as inside. Eastern is a kind of a mix between them both. He's shaking his head. So Northern cradle spirituality, such as all the Abrahamic religions, see God as something outside for us and go up to heaven. And in the Southern cradle religions, as I said, Orisha, a lot of the Orishas were actually human beings who did great things. So yeah, so there's that on peers. On race, it's the fact that, you know, okay, how do I put this to you? You think I'm either black or white. I am both black and white. I'm both black and white because I probably do have, you like using the word a lot, so I'll use it the one time. Some European enslavers, human traffickers, and colonialists probably raped my ancestors' family, probably. And you know, because I'm quite light skinned, so you know, I'm also got Indian in me as well. My great grandma, so there's that. So in that sense, I'm black and I'm these other things, but also I'm culturally, as white as a culture, I'm also that as well. You know, I'm also embedded in white culture and I'm a proponent of it. Also, in terms of archetypes, I also do have light in me as well, light and dark, like you have in yin yang. Yeah, so when you treat it like that, then it spits it out. And that's a basic tenet of Black Metamodernism. If you don't know that, you don't know what you're talking about. And you just need to sit, observe before you participate. Engage before you participate. And that's why I ask people. That's how I'm not POMO, by the way. Sorry. Thank you. I am complete.
All right. Now that you're complete, do you have a question for David?
Yeah. Would you like us to strip you of your title, King Long, the Long King, and knight me as allow me to be crowned as King Arthur in your mythical tale? Would you be able to let me have a go? Yeah.
You don't have a better question than that? I mean, anybody who wants to step up to the challenge can step up. All you gotta do is make a ground up case for your view. Start from the idea of all I know is that I exist, and tell me how you get to your cosmological conclusions. If you can do it, I would love to see it. It's definitely possible, depending on what your position is. Yeah.
Are you complete, David?
If that's his question, I'm complete. And it's King David, not King Long.
All right. So we've come to our summary conclusion round, where you'll have 10 minutes each. Because David just spoken, would you like to go first, Germane, or would you like to go second? You want to go second? All right. David, come back to us. Tell us your conclusions. Has anything changed?
I only think it's fair. I think it's only fair that Germane gets to have the closing word because I opened it. Yeah, Jaja, feed and clothe us. Man, this idea that there's dichotomous thinking again is a that integral is dichotomous in its thinking is a pre-trans fallacy. As you know, I know you don't know what that means, but you're basically reducing a higher stage of development of thinking to a lower stage. But that's in part because you don't understand it, because you're making comments about things that you've never studied. And no, I'm sorry, I can't extend anybody, regardless of race, color, creed, or sex, the respect of my peer until they actually rise to my level. What are you saying that you never said? I don't know. You'll get to say in your in statement. Don't worry. So I mean, we talked about the peers versus respect and basic dignity. Nobody's trying to silence you. If you want respect, you have to earn it. Appeals to authority like, hey, somebody said that I was smart when I said this. Okay, so what? Like, what's the difference? But okay, we already did that. So I think at the very end, yeah, man, like you want to say that it's like throwing stones, but again, you continue to act like when someone tells you that your ideas are not good enough, that they're not that good, that there are better ideas, that then somehow you're being oppressed. It's pathetic to play the race card in these conversations, man. And like, you act like you're open to other people's perspectives, but like I reached out to talk to you about this, and then you literally said shit like, this is war and come face me, and like all this ridiculous like dichotomous stuff. Like you couldn't have a reasonable conversation around this topic. Let me just, as part of my end thing, read some comments from the Black Modern group. Germane Marvel says to Jackson Wild, this is why I doubt your sincerity, and I hope you tune in on Friday. I'll show you and Mr. Long exactly why this is an attack on my existence. To say that his tool isn't good enough and that there are better tools is an attack on his existence. He's saying that like that if you have integral theory, that you'll be trapped in that. It's like, I mean, he doesn't even know what it is. Hint, if you notice, Black meta mode is for survival's sake. It's not the kind of frivolous, ego-driven, profit incentive game that you and David are used to. It's for fucking survival. You need to make a distinction if this space is right for you. For instance, this other person also liked one of my comments or something, and he has screenshots of this guy making racial generalizations. That's the kind of company you've fallen into. Yeah, guilt by association fallacy. That's really pathetic. You doubt my he says in response, you doubt my sincerity because I liked David's reply. What happened to diunital both and? Right? It's like, as soon as you challenge his view, it's no longer both and, it's I'm being attacked. You're not extending me the respect that I deserve. Like, you need to say that I'm your peer, even though I haven't earned it. And like all this kind of ridiculous, like he acts like he's entitled to be validated and justified. And if you don't do it, it's like you're a colonizer, you're a racist, you're a bad person who's trying to dehumanize him and end his survival. Jackson, he says, I'm treating you as if you are both sincere and not, which is just a contradiction. The trouble is, dichotomous nomadism often takes advantage of diunital sedentarism or something like this. Again, this dichotomy of North and South. Also, he mentioned how North people have this kind of a view on religion and South people have this kind of a view on religion, which is not true. Those different views on these traditions are more related to stages of development, and there are examples in both where both groups are taking it both ways depending on what stage of development that they're at. Anyways, this is why David riles people up by throwing stones. We've heard the throwing stone things. He does this to take the moral high ground from which to eventually throw another stone, which is just to say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. and that's me throwing stones. So I hope you use diurnal thinking and accept that so far your behavior has triggered me timbers. So this guy, not green at all, claiming to be triggered and that people need to give him respect without earning it. I could be wrong. You could have the best intentions, or you could be mocking diunity because you agree with Long on his opinions that this is not the one. Well, the one, the one way, the one approach, the one tool, that's first tier thinking. That's one of the markers of first tier thinking, is that thinking that you have the one true way. And yes, even postmodernists are guilty of this by saying that their idea that all perspectives are true and right is the one true way, which is exactly what you're doing. Then he comes back. The guy didn't even say anything back yet. And Germaine's like, fuck it. This is your final chance. I'm about to suspend you. If you support the forum, then I'll see you soon. Removing your ability to participate allows you to still gain from here. So he allows him to listen, but not to talk. You can still read the material. I guess you won't do nothing about looking into my stuff until after I expose David. Yeah, right. Even then you won't prior already. And then he's like, suspend me for what? And then he says, for not engaging with the material and being a distraction, and not an appreciation with your, and not a appreciation with your participation. So agree with him or you're his foe. Accept his thinking or you're trying to colonize him and end his survival. Like if you disagree with him, it's an attack. Let me also read this quote real quick up here about okay, yeah. I was telling him about the pre-trans distinctions and mentioning development and color codes. He says, this is another example of you dehumanizing Black thought and conceptual incarnation. And then Brent Cooper said, development is real, but stages are fungible social constructs. He says development is real, but your application of them is colonial, hegemonic, and still willfully ignorant of the broad discourse of metamodernism, which does not marry itself to abstractions people can weaponize. So basically, if you make a distinction about a person's ideas, which they could let go of and then get other better ideas, then somehow you're a colonialist, you're weaponizing, you're doing violence, and you're not validating, and you're threatening the existence of a person. So agree with me or you're attacking me. That is not a both and perspective. That's a performative self-contradiction, and it's not helpful at all in this community when it comes to wanting to have dialogues about what is better or best or good or true. If somebody can just be like, if you don't agree with me, then you're a racist. How are we going to ever build anything together in that kind of an environment, in that kind of a space? Yeah. You can say that metamodernism is more, and to the extent that it's more, and it seems like it's just green postmodernism with the metamodern title, like, you can have it. I'm not interested in your metamodernism. I think it is a second tier failed project, and your Black metamodernism, your philosophy, is a perfect example of why it's a failure. Now, you as an individual, you seem really cool. And yeah, I like you. Like, if we met in the world, I would be like, he's flipping me off. I would be like, wow, this guy is cool. Like, maybe we could hang out. We have a lot in common. And if he and if he actually learned the tools and we were engaging on the same level as peers, then I would be glad to be allies with him. But I'm
Okay. Now that we're all buddies, Germaine's closing remark.
I just want to note that my flipping of the finger is like, I'm kind of sincere. I'm also not. I think you get that. I'm joking, but I'm not, your compliments mean nothing to me, man. And like, I don't seek a validation from you. Otherwise, I wouldn't argue with actual racists. Notice, I don't actually call people racist in my forum. I use the term racial ignorance because, about judging. I do my best not to lay blame, just with responsibility and accountability. I don't think David's happy with this. David, you're not really welcome to participate in my forum. You can engage in terms of listening and reading, but that's about it. So if it meant, sorry, I put this one, I never said that because he started to tell some stuff. And now one of them I was incorrect about, so I apologize for that. It may seem, or I can see how you thought that, but you're just exaggerating and making me seem like a bad person. So I'm talking to the people who saw him throwing stones, not the people who just want black men Muslims to fail. It may seem that I said that spiral dynamics and integral are just traps. No, because actually they include what Ken Wilber calls vision logic, and I think which Layman properly refers to as affective logic, because it's about emotions and be able to have these different emotions. I'm actually really pissed off with David, but I'm gonna do the best I can to get this done. Holding these emotions together, so it's an affective logic, not a vision logic. That brings me to the idealism thing. I don't want to get caught up too much in. Basically, what David just did was read out a whole stuff, that interaction I was having, decontextualized interaction I was having with someone who I'm pretty sure agrees with David to a larger extent, doesn't like that Metamodern, found me somewhere and just came to attack. It's happened. I've had actual racist trolls saying, saying, you're just a monkey on a typewriter and you call me a troll, you look like an orc. That's just racist. Do you know what I'm saying? He was being racist, borderline racist. I don't even ban. I haven't blocked him. I'm such a power abusive mod. I haven't blocked him. What I've done is I've silenced him. David, if you know anything about that, maybe because it was you. I don't know. So I'll do my best in that forum. You don't like the way I do in that forum? Come talk to me about it. Let's see. That's how I do. Right. To hell with everything David was just talking about, because it's really just to distract from me becoming King Arthur. David starts his premise with Descartes. Descartes, if you've read my work, if you read my 6-minute, 10-minute work, I think, why can't we just get along? Why can't we just get along? Scout, Riley, this is for you as well, because you come with a Northern Hemisphere worldview and you treat me and things that I say, for instance, the one, or the way I spell the word white to not get done by the admins, you treat it one way when it's actually could be seen both ways. When I said the one, what I mean is, bruv, the way you're acting right now is not the one. Like I need your validation. I don't. It's not the one. I'm not saying it's not the one way that you have to do things. I'm not a dictator. You're the one who wants to be a dictator. You're the one who wants to be a dictator. Now in the groups, I am the democratic dictator. If people don't like what I'm doing, they can tell me and I'll change a bit. In the Hansi group, I run it like a democratic dictatorship. And I said that people ask me what they want to do, I will change. Simples. I set the rules. You like it? Stay. You don't? Leave. I don't like what you're doing. It's a full-time job doing this, so I'm going to not have to deal with you too much because I like to respond when I can. Yeah. How long have I got, Layman? How long for this Sword in the Stone challenge?
6.5 minutes left.
6.5. So David starts with the premise that when you come into the world, you think at first. I think, therefore I am. It's a nonsense. Because you think, therefore I am, because you think, therefore I am, you are basically alone in this world and you can't tell what other people think. This is what we've been trained to think, right? But that's not where it starts. We don't start as a fully grown white man in the, what time was it? 19 whatevers. We don't start like that. We start as children with our mothers, right? So we already start in this world and we start with a cry. We come out with a bang of bare pain, which our mothers go through to bring us into this world, and we come out with a bang of the pain of the air hitting our lungs. So the first thing we do is we feel. This is the Southern cradle, I feel, therefore I am. So I feel that I'm something. And also in a response, I feel it's come out of something that I knew, and I feel that I'm now being held by something. I feel warm, so I feel, therefore I think, oh, I measure it. Then I do the measurement of it. Then I measure the feeling, oh, I'm full now, therefore I am. That I am is an act. I am is an act. So there you have the actual basis. Idealism, this is a different basis to where David starts and where he's wrong, because he just applies the empty perceptual space of the northern cradle, which leads to objectivity, which is intersubjectivity. We can't prove objectivity empirically because everything comes from our senses. So it's just through my subjectivity, so I can only prove it intersubjectivity. Idealism, you make the false premise about it. Idealism, really, the one I'm going to talk about is mind dependence as opposed to mind independence. To say that the universe is mind dependent means that it is dependent upon minds to exist. That is how I deal with idealism. On the other hand, an anti-idealism statement would be that the world is independent of minds for existence. That's what the objective thing states, is that the world is independent. It's just here and it's objectively exists. What I would like to propose, and I'm not saying I believe this, but like to use Jason Kind's social kinds, Jason Storm's social kinds, instead of natural kinds, social kinds. All that we know, we only know through the social world. So to say that I arrive on my own is a myth. That's to put me, like David likes to do, to put himself at the top of things. Now with natural hierarchies are natural because A, they depend contextually, and B, that I can be better or different at lots of different things with lots of different metrics. So David just likes to see it in the metrics that he's really good at, spiral dynamics, which is why I'm too. He just came back for that, started throwing stones in that way. So basically all humans are at the end of a very long lineage of microbes, the social world of microbes, animals, plants, and fungi. We're right at the end of that. So actually, everything that we are comes from a social, actually comes from forms of minds. Now, minds, I'm not saying that everything is a mind. I'm saying that minds have different degrees, different modes. They're good at different things in different ways. Not as hierarchical as you like to make the ancients primitive, because that's just kind of colonial and racist. When you think like that in any kind of way, stages or anything, it's kind of colonial and kind of racist. Vinay Gupta calls it the teal man's burden instead of the white man's burden. Unfortunately, there's also exists a Vinay's burden, where Vinay also uses the evil all thinking like you do and thinks he's better than everyone else. He's also now silenced from the group for that reason. And he can come at me for a war if he wants, I don't mind. So here we've built now a world that is based on and grounded in the idealism of mind dependence. Now, if you add on to that, as you can read, my meta-idealism as well, but I'm not going to get into that here because I'm probably out of time. I don't know.
You have 2.5 minutes if you'd like them.
2.5 minutes. Let me see if I can remind myself on meta-idealism. Metamaterialism is the idea that, I'm just going to throw some stuff out there, diunital stuff that makes no sense. Metamaterialism is the idea that the substance of the world, the base substance, is process. The things that we see as stationary, including the stages, which this is coming from James Storm again, the things that we see as stationary are actually just the rigid formations of these processes is in between. And so if we study the formations, we will better know the processes. And it's the process that matters, not the formations. Because I can operate from red right now and be in complete fight mode, but still operate on a different level. I don't know, whatever, green, I'm thinking, we're all right in our own way. Because we probably are all right in our own way. We're all right about integral. I'm right about metamodernism. Layman's right in, hosting this. And I'm also, thinking in another way, because actually I can see that you're on a degree, in a way, not beneath me, but from you're talking beneath me. Your level of thinking on this isn't as acute as mine, which is fair enough because I've had to live this as a black man, So meta idealism, I can't remember what it is. I feel though I've completed the challenge because I've just shown how that the world can be based up from the idealist theory. You're laughing, so I think it's probably because I haven't included some of the world views. Being only relies on modes of sentience. That's ontology. Let me see. What else am I missing? Teleology, that the being just revolves around in itself and just comes back around. Epistemology, that I can only know the world by knowing others. And the more I know myself and my lens, the better I can know the world and know others. Because it's all the one same thing. I could go into more, but I'm actually just trying to regurgitate stuff I've written about people. So if you want to know more about this, I'm trying to remember what one it is, but I can't remember. If I can find it in time, I'll tell you. If I can't, I can't. Metamodern Metamodern existentialism, moving beyond nihilism with ontological discovery, gives you the full diunital toolkit, which I call emanism, which is the both anding of transcendence and immanence, which David could not ever deal with. Oh, I'm complete.
Okay. Well, trigger me timbers. That was what it was. Probably enough time to elicit our tensions, but not really enough time to resolve them. Classic. Thank you, gentlemen. I've been Layman Pascal. I appreciate both participants for their philosophical attempts, their human limits, and their human openings. Maybe this wasn't a triumph of sense-making, but I hope it goes a few inches toward opening up a more vibrant public intellectual exchange that brings some edge to liminal spaces. And I hope all the children in the village got free candy. I'm still not totally sure how diunital morality operates, who's doing the most subtle projecting of dichotomous thinking, or who's actually King Arthur. But thank you to anyone who took the time and interest to listen to these niche proceedings, and may you all receive the sincerely ironic blessings of the many one. Amen.